New Nordic.
The head of the Federal Aviation Administration has released a set of regulatory guidelines for flying taxis.
The 880-page document lays out the rules and regulations for the operation of electric passenger-carrying aircraft that take off and land vertically like a helicopter, but fly horizontally, airplane style. It describes the speed, cargo, and airspace criteria for air taxis and the training requirements for their pilots. Some companies hope to have paying passengers climb on board within 2 years.
That's ABC's Jim Ryan. Boeing is reporting a $6 billion loss on the same day that its striking machinists are voting on a new offer that would give them a 35% pay raise and end a 6-week-long strike.
Really, the main sticking point is over pensions. 33,000 machinists lost their pensions a decade ago. Now, 10 years later, they're demanding to get them back. Boeing is saying in 2024 that's not possible. Most companies don't have pensions anymore, let alone bring them back after they went away. But the workers are standing firm, with some saying they will vote no on Boeing's latest offer because it does not bring back their pensions.
ABC's Alex Stone. The baseball Los Angeles Dodgers starter Shohei Ohtani hit for his 50th home run this season has sold for nearly $4.4 million, a record high for any ball in any sport. Last month, Ohtani became the first player in baseball history to hit 50 homers and steal 50 bases in a season. No information about the winning bidder was disclosed. Dave Packer, ABC News.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie. And one thing I've learned is that you buy a house, but you make it a home. Because with every fix, update, and renovation, it becomes a little more your own. So you need all your jobs done well. For nearly 30 years, Angie has helped millions of homeowners hire skilled pros for the projects that matter. From plumbing to electrical, roof repair to deck upgrades. So leave it to the pros who will get your jobs done well. Hire high-quality certified pros at Angie.com.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
I'm Bill Walter, KVNU News. News is brought to you by Dr. Keith Nelson. The search for Utah National Guardsman Matthew Johnson's body continues. Johnson's wife, Jennifer Gledhill, is accused of murdering the guardsman and burying his body near Farmington Bay. Cell phone tracking led investigators to believe the land near the Davis County Waterfowl Management Area could be where Johnson's body is hidden. A road into the area was taped off Tuesday. Only those involved in the search for Johnson's body could get through. The Cottonwood Heights Police Department and officials with Weber County were at the scene, along with Utah National Guard volunteers. In addition to these agencies, it was found that a Department of Natural Resources park ranger was assisting a few days ago. 90 families in Lehigh were forced to evacuate their apartments after an early morning explosion that injured 2 people and set off the building's sprinkler system, according to authorities. The blast happened shortly after 4 a.m. Tuesday at the Lehigh Tech Apartments. According to a statement from the city, a married couple in the apartment where the explosion originated both sustained injuries from flying debris, and both were treated at the scene. No other injuries were reported. Photos shared by the city showed a balcony door and adjacent window that appeared to have been blown off the building completely, and a screen door laid crumpled over the edge of the balcony rail. The window frame had apparently been blasted completely off the building in the explosion, exposing underlaying where the window used to be, along with what appeared to be pink curtains and a blanket hanging on the interior of the apartment. There were not any signs of major damage that was immediately apparent on any of the neighboring apartments' windows or doors, though authorities have not said what sort of damage the blast may have caused inside. The building remained evacuated into this morning as crews worked to restore the fire suppression system. And Utah is among several states affected by a deadly E. coli outbreak from McDonald's Quarter Pounders. On Tuesday, the CDC announced 10 states with known illnesses. There have been 4 reported cases in Utah and 49 reported cases across the U.S. At least 1 person has died. 10 have been hospitalized, including a child with severe kidney complications. The other states with reported illnesses include Oregon, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Missouri. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention noted the outbreak may not be limited to those states, with the true number of people affected likely much higher. Officials said this is a fast-moving outbreak investigation. Most sick people are reporting that they ate quarter-pounder hamburgers from McDonald's, and investigators are quickly working to confirm which food ingredient is contaminated. McDonald's has reportedly pulled ingredients for these burgers, and the CDC said they will not be available for sale in some states. KVNU weather brought to you by Cardall's Insulation. If your home was built before 1980, you might consider updating your insulation, as today's insulation is superior to what you find in older homes. If you'd like a warmer, quieter home this winter, call 755-5012. And it is going to be getting cold the next couple of days. Rain likely tonight, mainly between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. Overnight low around 33. And then mostly sunny, but cooler on Thursday around 54. And then cold Thursday night, Friday morning down around 29. And warming up on Friday to 62. And sunny skies. You can always get more news at CashValleyDaily.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Keith Nelson, board-certified, fellowship-trained orthopedic surgeon, and I want to restore your active, pain-free life. I've been an innovator in the treatment of knee pain caused by arthritis and sports injuries for 27 years. I'm the only surgeon in northern Utah to offer Omnibotics, a robotic-assisted knee replacement for your arthritic knee, which has a 97% patient satisfaction rate. Don't live with your knee pain another day. Visit drkeithnelsonortho.com. That's drkeithnelsonortho.com.
Stay informed, stay connected. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, and online at 610kvnu.com.
When elected officials prioritize their self-interest, they erode public trust. Candidate Moore holds a $1.6 million interest in the Boyer Company. In 3 years, Boyer Company revenues increased 800%. As a CFO, CPA, and Utah State MBA, my oath requires me to avoid even the perception of a conflict of interest. I, Bill Campbell, will restore trust and prioritize you. My name is Bill Campbell, and I am running for Utah's 1st Congressional District, and I approve this message.
Don't let concerns about today's events derail your long-term financial strategy. Edward Jones Financial Advisors can help work with you to understand today's financial landscape and how to be positioned for the long term. Edward Jones can give you the tools for a reasoned, disciplined approach to investing. Get started by calling one of the 11 Edward Jones locations in Cache Valley. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
On the next Handle on the Law.
Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a disabled American veteran, and I went to a place of business.
Thanks for your service, for starters. Okay, I'm sorry, I just interrupted you.
Thank you. Vehicle, and I was denied access to the parking lot because
Robert,
they only had stairs. There was no accommodation for me to get up to look at the cars.
Robert, I don't know what's going on here. You have to start from the beginning. As soon as I started thanking you for your service, you kept on going. I was talking and you were talking, just like what's happening now.
It's Handle on the Law, Saturdays from 1 to 4 on News Talk KVNU, the voice of Northern Utah.
KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, online at 610kvnu.com, and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It is Wednesday, October 23rd. I'm Jason Williams. Coming up on the show today, highlights from exchanges with candidates on stages and at rallies and more here in Utah. This is one we haven't really focused on much so far, though we've spoken with both Congressman Blake Moore and his challenger in this race. He has two challengers in this race, but the other major party challenger, Democrat Bill Campbell, also a guest on the show recently. And it's, Congressional District 1 is not going to, it's not going to be purple or blue for a long time. So if I were the Republican in this race, I'd be feeling pretty confident right now. But it is always great to see a lively debate between the candidates. And hats off to the incumbent in this race, Congressman Blake Moore, for taking every re-election run he's been through so far, primaries and general elections, two of each, very seriously. He campaigns hard. The reality of electoral politics in Utah is the Republican candidate could file, set up a website, post a few pictures now and then to an Instagram account for the campaign and win. And the Democrats kind of know that. The Libertarian Party and Constitution Party candidates definitely know that. And the Republicans, of course, know that. But and sometimes you do see an incumbent take advantage of that, and it's ugly. But Congressman Moore has campaigned hard during this race, and he's engaged with his opponents every opportunity he's been able to, and it's led to some really lively discussions. So we'll get to those later on. Our continued effort to spotlight, at least in one way or another on each show this week, a candidate. We actually, I had two candidates scheduled for today. Both candidates happen to have similar responsibilities when it comes to their day job, and both candidates had to cancel last minute today due to bad timing on an announced meeting at their respective places of employment. But ironically, both of their jobs have a lot to do with each other, so both candidates had to cancel. We'll get to them tomorrow instead. And I did talk with Representative Dan Johnson as well. I'd invited him on the show where he's not running for re-election. I invited him on the show to talk a little bit about just the races in general, his thoughts on the presidential race. He'd made some comments recently about how distasteful he found a lot of the rhetoric in the presidential race in general. We're going to have that conversation today as well. He got a better offer, and I don't blame him for this. He's instead with family on a little bit of a outing, and he'll be with us next week. But the reason I bring that up is we've had a lot of questions about the remaining. So on your ballot, you'll see 4 constitutional amendments, and if you followed the news, because the legislature, broke the law, violated the state constitution to be exact, and also with the language of one of those amendments, Amendment D, tried to pull a fast one on voters and got caught. Amendment A and Amendment D will not count. You can vote for or against still on your ballot. That won't ruin your ballot or cancel your ballot, but there will be no tabulation of votes after the state Supreme Court backed up a lower court's ruling saying lawmakers were not honest in their ballot language choices. The judge in the lower court said basically voters wouldn't, the language is so deceptive that voters wouldn't even know what they were voting for or against. And that language, of course, written by the House Speaker Mike Schultz and Senate President Stuart Adams themselves. So an embarrassing self-induced moment of stepping on ranks for the Utah legislature around these. And votes for those respective amendments, A and D, therefore, won't count. But amendments B and C, both constitutional amendments, will count. So whether they are voted for by a majority with a yes vote or a no vote will actually count. And there's been a lot of questions and confusion around these. I've explained them this way myself. I've said two things about this. If you, like me, are angry about the legislature trying to pull a fast one on voters, a cynical and craven thing to see no matter when you see it or no matter who or what party the who belongs to, I hate seeing that kind of stuff. Voters are smart. Be honest with them. Tell them the truth and let them decide. In fact, the fact that the Senate President and the House Speaker felt the need to put their thumb on the scales in such a ham-handed way tells me what they were proposing is a horrible idea, and they know that. So if you're angry about that like I still am, Vote no on everything to send them a message. That's one way you can approach this. But as I've also said, Amendments B and C are not caught up in all this drama. There was no sneakiness from the legislature on the language. They're pretty straightforward, and it's up to you to decide. Amendment B is one we'll talk about a week from today with Representative Dan Johnson. He is kind of an expert on this one. Well, not necessarily the amendment itself, but the fund that the amendment affects. So, short version of Amendment B. Actually, let's get Amendment C out of the way because it's very simple, and we'll just get out of the way. Right now in Utah, statute requires that the county sheriffs be elected, that it's a position people run for, and they must be elected by voters. That's in state election code. There's been no proposal to change that, but in theory, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, a legislature could decide to change that. And so Amendment C is, well, first off, it's kind of coming from a hinky place. It's coming from a conspiracy theorist place. There was this big to-do when Obama was president that that's how he was going to stay in power. When his second term was up, he had infiltrated all the county sheriffs around the country, and he was just going to refuse to leave office, which, of course, he didn't. But unlike, well, we won't go there. But he didn't refuse to leave office. But the legend was that he was going to use county sheriffs. They were going to rise up and take over. It was absolute bonkers. But the idea has kind of stuck around. The idea that, someone somewhere, okay, it wasn't Obama, but someone somewhere in the future is going to use county sheriffs to take over the country and refuse to leave office. And they'll do this by installing friendlies as county sheriffs. So that's what this amendment is a response to. A lawmaker in Utah County was approached by a group who buys into this and decided to run it. The rest of the legislature agreed. There's no harm, no foul in writing it into the Constitution, and that's the short and sweet of Amendment C. Amendment C basically says it will be a constitutional mandate, not just statute, which could be changed by any legislature in a general session any year. It will be in the Constitution, which would require a lengthy process and a two-thirds majority vote to even get it on the ballot, and then voters would have to approve it to change the Constitution back. So Amendment C says the state constitution, not just statute, the state constitution will require sheriffs be elected by the public, by voters. I don't have a problem with this one. I think it's worth pointing out where it comes from. But overall, I don't, there's nothing wrong with this. It might be unnecessary, probably unnecessary. But if it makes even a handful of folks feel better, no harm, no foul. So there's Amendment C. The only reason Amendment B is complicated is that a lot of people don't understand, myself included until recently, how something called SITLA works, or how the Permanent School Fund works. And it's very complicated. It's a combination of investments. Well, we're not talking stocks here. We're not talking playing the market. We're talking land, we're talking leases, we're talking, sort of long-term, not going to make a lot of money, but make a little money type of investments that the state makes, and any profit they make off of the sale of land or a land swap that they can then lease the land. SITLA, for example, has swapped land with the federal government and then leased the land to grazers for a fee, and the money from that fee goes into this fund, and then the fund goes to pay for education. There is kind of a secondary provision of this fund, which says when lawmakers spend out of this fund, they can spend no more than 4% of the fund's total at any given time. That's to stop lawmakers from cleaning it out during a recession or in a tight financial year when revenue is down for whatever reason. So they can only spend 4% of it. The Constitutional Amendment B on your ballot basically says, let's up that to 5%. I have no idea what the ramifications of this might be. I've been told it's a big deal for schools, and I'm more than happy to vote for it in that case. I've also been told that some opponents have said this opens a door that maybe we shouldn't open. Skeptics of the legislature in general have said, look, they'll come back and they'll say, okay, you let us bump it up from 4 to 5%. How about we bump it up to 20%? We can spend 20% of the fund at any one time. That's a reasonable opposition argument. That's where my understanding and thinking on all of this stops. So Representative Dan Johnson knows a lot about SITLA and about this permanent school fund and about what the difference between 4 and 5% would mean to Utah schools. And so he's going to be with us. It'll be 1 week from today because he's traveling. So it will be kind of late in the cycle, but it's still plenty of time if you want to sit on your ballot and haven't cast a vote yet. And Amendment B is one you can't decide on. Representative Dan Johnson will be in, and he's not going to make the case for or against Amendment B. What he's going to do is explain how this fund works and explain what the difference between 4 and 5%, as the constitutional amendment would take it up to 5% of allowing lawmakers to spend 5% of the fund at any given one time. Representative Johnson will explain what that means. So if we leave it at 4%, what that means. If we up it to 5% with the constitutional amendment, what does that mean? So that's 1 week from today. Representative Dan Johnson will be here. That single ballot initiative or constitutional amendment proposal, I've talked to a lot of people who have been hung up on that one. They haven't cast their ballot yet. They've decided on all the candidates, probably knew before they got their ballot who they're voting for candidate-wise. But that amendment has been one that we've gotten the most questions about. So, again, I wish it could be sooner, but Representative Johnson really is the guy to talk to about this. No one in the state knows the School Trust Lands Fund and how that works its way into the state budget each year more than Representative Dan Johnson. So 1 week from today, he'll be here in the studio with us, and we'll break it down for you. So if Amendment B is your hang-up, you haven't decided how to vote on that one, you're still sitting on your ballot, we'll get an answer for you 1 week from today. Plenty of time for you to still get the ballot in the mail or a drop box. And, so a couple of announcements there. Violent crime and crime in general in Utah was a topic of a Utah Foundation analysis published today. And what they talked a lot about is something they found in their surveying and then contrasting public attitudes with the data, which they referred to as a perception disconnect, how people feel crime is here in Utah, high or low or increasing or decreasing, versus what the actual data say. We'll talk about it in just a bit here on KVNU's For the People.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
Today's hearing aid technology can improve not only your life, but the lives of the people who care about you. Once again, you'll be able to hear the reason for their laughter and understand conversations. Dr. Paul Danes will customize a hearing improvement program to meet your unique requirements, whatever they are. Call Dr. Danes for an appointment at 753-HERE and let him show you how.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
I'm Jason Thompson, and I'm running to be your next representative for House District 3. I'm not a politician. I'm a business owner and an entrepreneur. Our Utah House needs less politics and more action. I'm focused on what matters: lowering taxes, affordable housing, putting more of your hard-earned money back in your pockets, and a strong education system. We need less government intervention and fewer regulations. That's why I'm running. Your time to vote has arrived. Vote for Jason Thompson for a better future.
Paid for by the committee to elect Jason Thompson.
That is the sound of one of those big trees over your driveway this winter when we get a big snowstorm. And that is the sound of that branch coming down on your truck parked in the driveway. But that can be the sound of the guys at Hull Tree Care, working to prevent such tragedy from happening. Call Hull Tree Care now to get your trees and shrubs trimmed before winter. And right now, Hull Tree Care is offering 10% off any service. Call 760-6587. That's 760-6587.
Fall is upon us and the leaves are changing colors. That means it's time to hit the canyons in style. So pack up the whole family for a drive and go to see all the sights in the comfort and safety of a new Murdoch Chevy. Drive in and take up to $10,000 off a new Blazer EV or Equinox EV. When you walk through our doors, you feel like family. At Murdoch Chevrolet in Logan and Woods Cross or online at murdochchev.com. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
Call 888-391-6083 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 10/31/24.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Just a few minutes, we'll get to this Utah Foundation crime report. This is the latest crime data in Utah, but they also did some surveying, and their executive summary of the analysis published today begins with, "There is a public disconnect." First sentence in the summary. And by public disconnect, they mean there is a big difference between the people of Utah in general, their perception of crime in Utah versus what the data say about crime and crime trends. And interestingly enough, they found that this also is predictable by political party, which is a whole conversation for another day. So we'll talk about what their executive summary says and show you where you can actually read the entire analysis from the Utah Foundation in just a bit. I wanted to announce this. I got word of this yesterday from a good friend of the show, Leslie, sent this in. She is a longtime Cache Valley activist, both politically and in the public policy realm. She's worked with the county. She's worked with the precincts during caucus night. She's worked with the Utah Republican Party, with candidates and more. And she shot this my way. It's now all over Facebook today. But I just wanted to tell everybody about it. But everyone in Cache Valley is invited to join what is being billed as a dynamic discussion on key issues this Saturday. Specifically, looking through the lineup here, you've got, so speaking at this event on Saturday, a free event, by the way, which will take place at the Cache County Sheriff Complex, which is 1225 West, 200 North, just down the street from us here. And this community event will feature a panel of both local and state leaders, and they'll be talking about everything from water to growth to crime. So the panel is Cache County Sheriff Chad Jensen, House of Representatives Representative Casey Snyder. I'm going to start calling him KD, though. Casey Snyder, Representative Casey Snyder, Hyde Park City Mayor Brian Cox, Cache County Attorney Taylor Sorensen, and the event will be moderated by former Speaker of the House and frequent, I won't call him perennial yet because he hasn't run for a while. For a while there, he was running for everything. Former Speaker of the House Greg Hughes will moderate the event. If you've never met Greg Hughes in person, and now I'm not talking about his politics. Greg and I butt heads on state politics. And I used to joke with him that if he stayed Speaker of the House any longer, he was a corruption scandal waiting to happen, which he would then roll his eyes at me. We have a fun relationship that way. But he is a smart guy. He knows state policy, and he is funny. So I'm looking forward to just his moderating of this event on Saturday. But to have a local mayor, the county sheriff, county attorney, Representative Casey Snyder, and others discussing basically the future challenge from a challenges perspective, the future of Cache County. Again, this will happen at the Cache County Sheriff's Complex, the third floor, the public room there at 1225 West, 200 North. And everything on, so Representative Casey Snyder will be talking about water. Mayor Brian Cox will be talking about city growth and management, the challenges of dealing with growth from a city perspective. Cache County Attorney Taylor Sorensen will be talking about crime and changes to sentencing guidelines from the legislature. Sheriff Jensen will talk about public safety in general. And then Greg Hughes will do, after the panel, he'll do a little Q&A with allowing the audience to ask questions. It's a free event. Seating is very limited, so they're asking people to reserve a spot through an Eventbrite link, which I have posted to our Facebook page. And that is, again, this Saturday, Priorities for Cache Valley, a discussion, Saturday, October 26th, 1 to 3 p.m. And doors open at 12:45 to let you in a little bit early. And that'll take place at the Cache County Sheriff's Complex, the third floor of the building, the public room there. Moderator Greg Hughes, Representative Casey Snyder, Hyde Park Mayor Brian Cox, Cache County Attorney Taylor Sorensen, Cache Sheriff Chad Jensen, and more with an opportunity for a public Q&A at the end. Again, 1 to 3 p.m. this Saturday, October 26th, a free event. The public is invited to Priorities for Cache Valley, a discussion. Link to the Eventbrite page to reserve your spot is currently on the show Facebook page. On Facebook, search for KVNU's For the People, and you can find it there. You can also do a simple Google search for Priorities for Cache Valley, and find the event that way. So, on the other side, speaking of Priorities for Cache Valley, this is a statewide survey and data analysis done by the Utah Foundation on crime. What the latest data from the latest data, by the way, is from August of 2024, but they go back years on this. What the latest data say about crime in Utah and how that differs from public perceptions of crime in Utah from surveying the Utah Foundation did after they collected the actual data. It's a really interesting look on how not just media narratives and political narratives can shape our view of crime, but also how what the media chooses to focus on shapes our view of crime. Things they decide to report and things they don't. We'll talk about it after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News is brought to you by Roof Rescue. A female grizzly bear that delighted visitors for decades in Wyoming's Grand Teton National Park has been struck and killed by a vehicle. Officials say the grizzly, known as number 399 and beloved by nature photographers, wildlife enthusiasts, and other park visitors, was struck Tuesday night south of Jackson Hole. At age 28, the bear was the oldest reproducing female grizzly in the Yellowstone ecosystem. Each spring, wildlife enthusiasts awaited her emergence from her den to see how many cubs she had birthed over the winter. Authorities say the driver in the crash was not hurt. They add that a cub was with the grizzly when she was struck and apparently unhurt, but its whereabouts are unknown. The Utah Hockey Club will be without a couple of defensemen for a long period of time after Sean Dursey and John Marino each underwent surgery. Dursey had his right shoulder repaired after being injured last week in Utah's fourth game of the season and is expected to be out 4 to 6 months. Marino had an operation on lower back problems that had him sidelined throughout training camp. The team expects Marino to miss 3 to 4 months. The team, formerly known as the Arizona Coyotes before relocating to Salt Lake City under new ownership, is aiming to end the franchise's playoff drought. KVNU weather brought to you by Mount Logan Laundry with their 55 and 80-pound washers to make your stay much shorter in Logan and Brigham City. Increasing clouds, rain likely by late tonight after 9 o'clock tonight, and continuing into the overnight hours at times. Overnight low around 33, and then mostly sunny on Thursday as the storm is out of here, but it is going to be cooler tomorrow. High temperature around 54. Get more news at CacheValleyDaily.com.
ABC News, I'm Dave Packer. Former President Donald Trump rallying supporters today in Swing State, Georgia. During a faith-based town hall event in Zabulian, Trump reminded supporters they can vote early.
It's going to be a big one. I think it's the most important election in the history of our country. I really believe that.
The White House responding to new reporting from the New York Times, where former White House Chief of Staff John Kelly recounted occasions when former President Trump would speak highly of Adolf Hitler. Vice President Kamala Harris reacting.
This is a window into who Donald Trump really is, from the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room.
The Turkish Defense Ministry reporting more than 24 Kurdish militant targets were destroyed in airstrikes in Iraq and northern Syria. This following an attack on an aerospace facility in Turkey's capital that left at least 5 people dead, 22 hurt. Wall Street, the Dow down 409 points today. This is ABC News.
Roof Rescue is your local roofing specialist, dedicated to keeping your home safe and dry no matter the weather. Their team of experienced roofers is here to serve you, providing top quality service at affordable prices. From minor repairs to complete roof replacements, they've got you covered. Remember, your roof is your first line of defense in protecting your family from the elements. So don't wait until the next storm to discover your roof problems. Call Roof Rescue today at 435-999-4268. They're your trusted local roofing experts, here to keep your home safe and dry. Roof Rescue, celebrating 10 years of providing watertight peace of mind.
From ABC News, Wall Street Now. Disappointing earnings weighing heavily on stocks Wednesday. Boeing reporting its biggest quarterly loss since the pandemic. Shares of McDonald's falling about 5% after an announcement from the CDC that its hamburgers are linked to a fatal E. coli outbreak. And shares of tech giant NVIDIA weighing on the tech space, the chipmaker confirming a design flaw in its Blackwell AI chips. Shipments will be delayed. As the negatives piled up, the major index is experiencing their worst sell-off in a month and a half. The Dow losing 409 points, now down 2% from its record high. The Nasdaq down 296 points. The S&P 500 fell below 54 points. Sales of existing homes slowing in September to their weakest annual pace in nearly 14 years. They're on track for their worst year since 1995. Sales fell 1% last month from August, says the National Association of Realtors. Higher mortgage rates keeping buyers on the sidelines, although rates have eased a bit and the supply of properties on the market continues to climb. Dave Packer, ABC News.
Hey, get prepared for the hunting season. Did you remember to bring your hunting gear, your sleeping bags, and coats into Mount Logan Laundry? With their 55 and 80-pound washers and dryers, they can do any job. And while you're at it, bring in the comforters and blankets and get ready for the colder months ahead. Try Mount Logan Laundry. For a few quarters, you can use their large-capacity washers and dryers and be done in no time. Free Wi-Fi and drop-off service. They're at the corner of 5th East and 9th North in Logan, or in Brigham on the corner of 1st East and 7th South. Mount Logan Laundry really is the cleanest spot in town.
The Aggies continue conference play Saturday as they travel to Wyoming to face the Cowboys.
Are we a confident team? We're probably the most 1-6 confident team in the country, but we just need to get better at our small details. And until we do, it's just too many one-on-one plays that we're losing.
Pre-game begins at 3, kickoff is at 5, and post-game and Aggie call immediately follows the game. It's the Aggies and the Cowboys, Saturday afternoon on News Talk KVNU.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Utah Foundation. It's something fascinating coming out of the Utah Foundation. For those not familiar, Utah Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose sole purpose for existing is, well, they have two purposes. One purpose is to fundraise so they can keep doing stuff. And the other purpose, which takes up 95% of their time, is the stuff they do. And the goal here is to create better informed public policy. They don't take a position on any particular issue or public policy that might be up for debate in an upcoming legislative session. But what they do is keep an eye on what lawmakers are talking about, what lawmakers are working on, and then they go out and find all the data they can about that issue and put it in a nice, digestible way with visualizations, a report of sorts. And then they publish it for both the public and public policymakers. And it's a free service. Well, it's not free. Again, they have to fundraise to be able to do this, and you're always welcome to donate. But what they do is really amazing. And they've made public policy in Utah. This is a direct quote from a former Senate president. Told me the Utah Foundation had made public policy in Utah at least 40% smarter. And he kind of smiled when he said that, kind of taking a self-deprecating jab at he and other lawmakers. But he said they've made us a lot smarter, helping to inform us on some of these issues. So that's the short and sweet of who the Utah Foundation are. And they've been guests here on the show many times over the years. This was out just this morning. I didn't have time to see if we could get them on the show to talk about this, but it's a pretty straightforward report on crime in Utah. And this is playing off of a previous survey they did earlier this year called the Utah Priorities Project, where they asked Utahns, they surveyed thousands of Utahns and basically said, what are your top concerns? And the results were kind of surprising. Lawmakers didn't like the survey because the top concern of the majority of about 4,000 respondents was lawmakers not listening to us. So that surprised me, too, that was the top priority. I thought immigration, water, any of these things. Water was number 2. Number 1 was lawmakers are not listening to us. So the Utah Foundation took that survey they published in June and ran with it in several different ways. The number 4 concern of Utahns in the June Utah Foundation Utah Priorities Project report was crime. And so today they followed up on that. They decided, since it was the number 4 concern, they've done this with water and immigration and everything else already. But number 4 concern was crime, and they published their report on that today. So crime is obviously in the top 10, number 4 concern for Utahns. And that should come as a little surprise that the issue ranks kind of high among voters responding to the Utah Foundation's Priorities Project survey earlier this year. None of that is surprising. What is surprising, though, is as they dug into the data, the Utah Foundation analysts said they found there is a huge disconnect. The short and sweet of this is crime statistics in Utah paint now, obviously it could be better. It could always be better when it comes to crime, right? 0 crime is your goal, right? So it's not that there isn't room for improvement in any way, but the data actually show a pretty decent picture of crime trends in Utah. And then public opinion surveying shows a growing concern over crime. And the two correlate. So as crime in Utah has generally trended down, most crime, we'll get to that in a second, the public perception of the frequency of crime and the concern over crime has grown and grown and grown. Now, the Utah Foundation says this could be part of the politics of Utah. Being a red state, you can infer from that cable news, for example. In a red state, you can infer very comfortably there are probably a lot more Fox News watchers than CNN watchers. And so Utah Foundation looked into that, and they found that Fox News obviously covered crime data and crime stories far more frequently than their MSNBC and CNN counterparts, and more so in an election year. So that could be part of it. But the Utah Foundation says we have no way to know that. That's pure speculation on our part, that might be one of the reasons. The disconnect, they write in their executive summary, between the perceptions of Utahns and the criminal realities surrounding them could be just a function of increased media coverage of crime, media bias in choosing what crime and how frequently to cover certain crimes. But a far more likely explanation, they say, at least for the majority of this attitude, is simply that there are more crimes and more crime stories. So now that doesn't make sense, right? When you hear crime is trending down in Utah, most crime, and we'll talk about that in a second again, then it seems contradictory to say, if crime is trending down, how are there more news stories about crime? Utah Foundation says this could honestly just be a result of population growth. With population growth, you may not see an increase in the rate of any crime, whether it be property crimes or violent crimes. You might not see an increase in the rate per capita, meaning whatever a state is doing to fight crime is working, or at least holding it steady. It's not growing in frequency per capita. But if your population has doubled, as some areas in Utah have, the public perception is still going to be crime is on the rise. So again, the data, Utah Foundation says, shows a downward trend in all but one type of crime in Utah. The public perception is that crime is higher than it's ever been. That's an interesting contradiction there. And again, their theory makes sense. Of course, it could be a lot to do with media coverage. What the local outlets, including us here at KVNU, choose to cover. Maybe we're covering more crime, and maybe that's creating a public perception that there is more crime. But I lean more towards their Utah Foundation's preferred explanation, which again, they say we can't know any of this for sure. And we're not putting that we know that in this executive summary. What we're doing is speculating on most likely explanations. And it would make sense, and this makes sense to me, that a public perception that crime is on the rise might be a result of more news stories about crime, or more stories go around the neighborhood about local crimes, more crimes that people actually maybe hear about firsthand or witness even. And so the perception then is crime is on the rise. But actually what's happening is as population grows, crime rises, but not as a rate of population per capita. So give you an example. This is an interesting trend here in Utah. The one, I've said this a few times now, but the one crime rate that has not trended down as quickly as everything else. So Utah Foundation went back through crime data all the way back to 1986. And the most recent data they had to work with was incomplete data from July 2024. The last year they have complete data for is 2023 because 2024 is not over. So they had some data from 2024, but to be fair, they said we'll stop at 2023. And they looked at this and they showed that so there's a nice graph in the report. And if you'd like to see it, you can download the report as a PDF at utahfoundation.org. But it shows that, and I don't know what the reasons for this are, but so, for example, property crime. In the United States, property crime in Utah has been on a downward trend steadily since 1986. Utah experienced a huge boom in property crime that started roughly in 1995 and didn't dip back down to match the U.S. average per capita of property crimes until 2000. So for 5 years, mid to late 90s, for some reason, property crime in Utah skyrocketed. I have no idea what that's about. Since then, property crime in Utah, just as one example, has tracked right with the national average on a steadily downward trend. The rate of property crime, so this rate is calculated as this. By the way, this is also including FBI and macro trends data, which is data from police departments all around the country. That's how they come up with the national numbers. So let's look at violent crime. This is where things get interesting as well, especially keeping in mind where we started, public perceptions versus what the reality shows. So in the United States, violent crime saw a big surge starting in about 1988, and that really didn't start to noticeably trend down until about 1994. And then it started to trend down quickly. And then it's been trending down other than during the pandemic. There was a slight uptick in 2020 of violent crime. And then a huge dip mid-2020 until about 2022. No explanation for that, but it's like a little check mark almost in the national data. But the point is that violent crime has been trending downward steadily, just like property crime in the U.S., since the mid-90s, except for Utah. Utah saw, again, a big uptick in property crime, mid-90s to late 2000s, and then started to kind of follow the national trend after 2000 of property crime going down. What Utah hasn't seen go down is violent crime. Now, we're still well below the national average per capita for violent crimes here in Utah, but we've been trending up in violent crime statistics since 2010, roughly. I don't have an explanation for that. Utah still remains lower per 100,000 people for violent crime. So that's the rate of violent crimes per 100,000 people. Utah is still far lower than the national average. But when the national average took a big down tip in 2021 to 2022, Utah saw a big uptick, same year. Now, both Utah and the national average have started trending down again, And Utah, once again, still well below the national average when it comes to violent crime per capita. But we've seen a steady rise since 2010. The nation has seen a steady decline, slow decline, but steady. I have no explanations to offer on this. Again, what's interesting about this, though, is that overall, again, Utah has relatively low crime rates. Violent crime, property crime, theft, even auto theft, very, very low rates per capita compared to many other states and even the national average. But certain crimes have become more notable. Utah Foundation also points this out. Some of these crimes are crimes that in many parts of Utah were never in the news, and people could pretend didn't happen. But as population grows, as news coverage gets more spread out and they start covering rural areas more, which has happened over the last 10 years, then suddenly an awareness of the crimes can lead to a public perception that the crime is actually increasing. When, for example, one crime in Utah that has basically held steady for 2 decades, simple assault. This is, a fist fight, a bar fight, 2 neighbors getting into it over a fence line, and someone's charged with assault. That's held really steady in Utah. But the public perception is that it's on a huge spike, that it's on a huge increase, that simple assaults are up in Utah. The number of arrests in Utah has increased since before the pandemic. In 2019, there was a total of 27,276 people arrested in Utah in that single year, 2019. And that figure increased each subsequent year until you get to 2023, where 38,000, more than 10,000 more people arrested in Utah in 2023 than in 2019. Hate crimes against lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender Utahns have also increased steadily and dramatically since 2019. But that said, Utah Foundation says as of 2022, only 10 states exhibited a violent crime rate lower than that of Utah. So again, what this all says about the public perception, in contrast to what the data says, Utah, when it comes to violent crime, we might have a little bit of a problem. We're seeing an uptick, a slow uptick, but an uptick at a time when the rest of the nation overall is seeing a downtick, seeing a steady decline year to year since 2010. Utah has seen an increase year to year since 2010. That said, per capita, we still have a very low crime rate. The public perception that that's not the case might stem from the fact that as population grows, more crimes are going to be committed, which means more crimes are reported on or heard about or passed around the neighborhood water cooler or the work water cooler. So the perception is there's more crime, but as a rate of population, we're actually still, except violent crime, on a downward trend. Violent crime on a slight upward trend. It's a really interesting look. The visualizations are great. It does, towards the end of the report, get wonky. So if you find that stuff entertaining, you're going to really enjoy the last 4 pages. But the first 2 pages are easy to digest, great visualizations, and then a list of 27 different endnotes, supplementary sources, if you're interested in this type of thing, that you can go read and learn even more. It's a fascinating look at crime in Utah, courtesy of the Utah Foundation, and I've linked to it on our Facebook page. You can also find this and more of their research at utahfoundation.org, and we'll be back right after this.
Weather changes are tough on your transmission. As we move to colder winter weather, AMCO Transmission invites you to bring your vehicle in for preventative maintenance before the snow flies. Have a diesel pickup, Cummins, Duramax, or Power Stroke? AMCO in Logan is your transmission specialist, and they promise to get you in quickly. For over 50 years, AMCO Total Car Care has been experts in repair for transmission, brakes, tune-ups, and more. Find your local AMCO. 75 East, 2000 North, 752-1940.
Hey Cache Valley voters, this is Kyla from your County Clerk's Office Elections Division. If you haven't mailed in your ballot yet, or just prefer to vote in person, we've got you covered. Early in-person voting is happening from October 29th to November 1st, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Cache County Administration offices. And on Election Day, we'll be at the Cache County Events Center at the Fairgrounds from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. But why wait? Avoid the lines. Drop your ballot in the mail by November 4th or use one of our convenient drop boxes. Let's make your vote count, Cache Valley.
From everyone at Greenbox Solar, we are proud to be your gold winner for Solar Company in the 2024 Best of Northern Utah. We couldn't have done it without you.
Is it just me, or does life seem to slow down this time of year? The kids are back in school, the days are shorter, everyone is on more of a routine. I love it because I get to spend more time with Mom. You see, we moved Mom to Legacy House of Logan a while back, and it's been the best thing for her and us. The meals are wonderful. The activities are so good for Mom. She's made so many friends. The attention they give Mom is more than I could ask for. Thank you, Legacy House.
Legacy House of Logan provides 24-hour care to help your loved one with daily activities on 1400 North in Logan.
Well, that was supposed to be music. Still a few bugs and squirrels in the system here as we adapt to this new technology. Man, our studios look cool, though. That's it for hour one of today's show, but stick around. Again, every show, every day this week, and most of next, we're going to try and include some form or another of a candidate spotlight. One that we didn't get to from last week, which I'm excited to get to, is the Congressional District 1 debate. Again, this is, you don't have to be a political scientist to predict how this race ends. And Congressman Moore could just file to run for re-election, set up a website, post a few pretty pictures now and then to an Instagram account, and win. The 1st Congressional District is a red district. He's not doing that. He's engaging with his opponent. He's attending every public event that he's been invited to, and it's led to some fascinating exchanges on public policy, from foreign policy to the budget and the deficit to the future of the United States when it comes to our democratic institutions and more. We'll get some highlights for you from last week's Congressional District 1 debate hosted by the Utah Debate Commission with Democrat Bill Campbell, a Libertarian candidate whose name I forget off the top of my head, and Congressman Blake Moore. Highlights of that coming up in hour two. We'll also talk more about this upcoming event on Saturday, a Cash Priorities event. And Hyde Park Mayor Brian Cox, a big part of this event on Saturday. Why? Well, there's some good reasons. We'll talk about it in hour two, right after this here on KVNU Logan.